Mic check, test 1, 2. Mic check, test 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mic, good. You got it. Tap once. Yep, tap once. Tap once.
Yep.
You're live. Talk.
And grab something.
She went to the what, bathroom?
I don't know where, she just stepped out real quick, so you might want to wait for her.
Okay.
Where in Florida? Wow. You know, the more I hear about Florida, the more unappealing it seems.
Good evening. Welcome to the Mott Community College, Thursday, June 13th, 2024 special meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. All those that are able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The agenda is adopted. Comments from the public? Jordan, do we have any comments from the public?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do.
Okay. In accordance with Section 1640 of the meeting procedures, board policy states that the board chairperson shall invite the public to address the board. All citizens who wish to address the board or wish to communicate with the board in writing shall identify themselves and/or the group they represent, if any. They must also state their reasoning for addressing the board. Citizens addressing the board shall be limited to 5 minutes in making their remarks unless the time is increased or decreased by consent of the board. A brief supporting the remarks made by the citizen may be submitted to the board for its consideration. Jordan?
Mr. Chair, our first comment's been submitted by Ann Figueroa of Mount Morris, and she's going to speak on the topic of the hiring process.
Good evening, trustees. There's a little reverb here. I've been watching the hiring process for the interim president, and I'm concerned that some of the trustees have little or no hiring experience and are trying to force this board to not follow best hiring practices. There are human resource professionals at work here or could be hired to streamline this process. While they are aware that they need to keep things legal, like the questions, they want to rely on a non-labor, non-public attorney. The HR specialist should be leaned on to vet the questions to help the board to ask the right questions. Not just where have you worked or what is your training, but situational questions. What would you do if questions, just to see the type of reaction they would have if they were faced while working here. The ad hoc committee wants to give the questions to each applicant ahead of time. There's absolutely no value in that. Coming in with scripted responses does not give you the insight on how they would react when encountering an unknown situation, which would be important for you to know for someone who is trying to lead this college in the interim. Please remember, the goal is hiring a good leader for Mott Community College. Do not get lost in the process of who does what, and I want my questions asked, or how many votes can I get for what I want. You are trustees. You were elected to a position of trust, and the future of Mott is in your hands.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments from the public or letters?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the next public comment's been submitted by A.C. Dumas out of Flint, and he's going to speak on the topic of general business.
Thank you.
My name is A.C. Dumas, and I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Flint. And as the previous speaker said, that you were elected as trustees, and that's a position of trust. And I hope that this board would do what's right, what's fair, and what's equitable for the residents of the city of Flint. A lot of things that have been happening in this board, and I have some of personal things that I don't like as far as this board. But the public will be the final arbiters when you all come up for re-election, and they will remember, if you remembered, the residents of Genesee County. I'm glad to see Mr. Daly back, and so that's all I have to say, that we're watching, we're listening, and we're waiting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the next comment's been submitted by Arthur Woodson on Stewart Avenue, and he'll speak to the topic of the agenda.
Good evening. The last meeting I came to, man, it was different. As I said before, I don't believe that politics should not be with or included in healthcare and education. Your ideology should not be in this right here. Chairperson Andy, you ran that board like a dictator, and then I went and looked at some other meetings, and everything has to be your way. I'm not understanding. I mean, I went to a lot of interviews, and the business or the corporation, they never sent me questions and said, Art, when you come to the interview, these are the questions that we are going to ask you. So why would you want to give someone questions before they even come and do the interview? That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, they already prepared. That doesn't make sense. And then last week, you made things harder than what it was. If you had someone or ad hoc committee that was going to do recommendations, go over the applications, you could have just stepped back and said, you know what, Friday they coming in, and when we come to the full board, we can go over procedures, we can go over all this. That was unnecessary fighting, for real. I mean, it was unnecessary. What it showed was that you wanted to prove that you are in control. That's how I saw it. That was the optics of what I saw. And your attorney, I know he want to make some money, but he has to be fair. That's the point of everything, fairness. He knew that public speaking was supposed to go on, and he was afraid to tell you that. It's all about fairness. It's all about equity. It's all about equality. It's all about opportunity, everybody having the same opportunity. And that's not happening here. It's about who's a Republican, who's Democrat, who's this, who's that, and it's a chest-thumping contest. I'm just saying. Don't get mad at me, I'm just saying. Election is coming up, and I was like, dang, you know what? I might run. And then it's gonna be all hell on the board, so might as well go act right now, because if I run and I get on the board, I'm gonna act like you. I mean, seriously. So I'm hoping and praying that you all do what's right. Lisa Hagel, if she's in this package, she definitely does not need to be the interim president, because July of 2020, the judge found that she was unfair in running GISD illegally. Act 18, she did not want to give.
Sir, we do not get into maligning candidates. We don't know who the candidates are.
Okay.
So that's not appropriate to do that.
Did you stop my time? Did you stop the time? You can't tell me who I can and can't talk about.
It's not on the agenda, and it's part of what I read. If it's on the
Is the
agenda, we don't
applications put
have the
in?
names of the candidates.
Okay, you don't have the names.
But don't malign somebody. They're not here to defend themselves.
I don't
It's not
need
fair
them to be here to defend
So
themselves.
please go on, sir.
All right, Lisa Hagel, you can't stop me from saying, see, that's the type of bull crap that I'm talking about right there. You cannot stop me from saying anybody's name or anything else. If Lisa Hagel is in that, I said, if Lisa Hagel is a candidate, she should not be approved for this position. And there's nothing that you can say or do to stop me from saying that. She was found unfair, illegal, running GISD under the Act 18 and would not give the Flint City schools the money. So
She's
you
not
can't-
an issue today. She's not here.
I don't
And
care.
we're not working on it.
I don't
But you're
care.
bringing
If
up
she's in
things
that
aren't here.
package, if she,
So please,
so
get to
listen,
the
listen
issues
to
of the
this,
day,
listen to
sir.
this, right? Listen to this. If she's in that package, can I come back up here and talk about her? If she's in that package.
If she's a candidate of the top 5. Otherwise,
I
we
don't
don't
care if
know the
she's a
names
top
of the
5 or
candidates.
not. If she's in that
The names were
package-
not given to this
See, that's the
board.
type of
We don't
bullshit that
have
I'm
the
talking
names,
about
sir.
right there. If she's in that package, can I come back up here and talk about her? Because you won't allow me to talk about her now. Can I come back up here and talk about her?
She's not on the agenda. You can't talk
Is
about
the
it. We're here to
candidates-
select the
is the
president,
applications-
not to malign other individuals.
Is the applications
Thank you,
on the
sir.
agenda? Thank you. Is my time up?
Time is up.
Hey, so
Thank you very much.
check this out.
Have a good day.
Check this out. You sitting up here going back and forth with me.
Are there any other
And taking
speakers
my
today,
time.
Jordan?
See, how you going to take my time going back and forth with me and then
Sir,
won't
your
allow
time
me?
has expired.
It's expired because you was sitting up here
Jordan, do
going
we
back
have
and
any
forth
other
with me.
speakers today?
But see,
Jordan.
I'm going to say this. That's
Jordan.
the type of bull crap that I'm talking about right there.
We do have other
See,
speakers.
you want to thump
We
his
do have
chest
another one?
and take my time.
Thank you very much.
You want to thump your chest
Your
and take
time
my
has
time.
expired, sir.
I came in
Please
here with
vacate
a
the seat.
complete leveled head, trying to speak without fussing and being aggressive. But you want to thump your chest, man. You sitting up there telling me what I can and can't say, and took my time that I was talking and won't even allow me to finish what I was saying and won't give me my time. You could at least afford me at least a minute, not even a minute, 30 seconds to complete what I wanted to say. But you know what? I'm going to get up from this seat because you that type of person that
Mr.
will
Chair.
piss a person off.
Yes,
no, I'm
sir,
good.
have
I'm
a-
good.
I make a motion
No,
that.
no, no, I'm good.
No. I make a motion that Art Woodson gets another 2 minutes since.
2 minutes. We have a
Arguing back and
second.
forth.
We have a second. All those, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. There are no nays. Please step back up. 2 minutes.
To the audience, I'm sorry for foul language, but this is what's happening in Genesee County and throughout our country. Matter of fact, throughout the world. We do not have the common courtesy or decency to respect one another. Andy, Chairman Andy, because I'm gonna respect your position, you are a difficult person to deal with. And for you to sit here and argue with me about what it is that I'm speaking about, you have people who have died, veterans who gave all to protect this country and your constitutional right. One thing about it, Supreme Court even ruled about freedom of speech. And one thing about it, they say, as long as I'm not screaming fire in a crowded theater, it's nothing that you can do about what I say. If you call me the N-word, it's nothing that I can do about it because it's protected under freedom of speech. I'm sitting here speaking about a candidate that might be in that package. It's nothing that you can do about me speaking about her. And I didn't speak about her on a personal level. I spoke about her politically, what she did over at GISD. That is nothing that you can safeguard her. You can't stop me from talking about her, period. When will people understand that you cannot take people's rights, man? You can't. And I won't allow you to take mine. I was willing to die for mine. I went to the military. And I'm not going to allow you to take my right for nothing.
That is time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jordan?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have another comment, but before that, for clarification, Trustee Wolcott motion to allow Arthur Woodson 2 minutes to speak, and then Trustee Daly seconded the motion. All members present voted aye. All right. So the next up is Sean Murray of Flint City, and he submitted our public comment on the topic of Board of Trustees and interim president. As far as hiring an interim president is concerned, this Board of Trustees is ill-equipped for the task and lacks the experience, expertise, and qualifications in selecting a qualified interim president replacement for the esteemed...
Jordan, could you have I can't hear you. Can you talk closer? Thank you.
All right, I'll restart. As far as hiring an interim president is concerned, this Board of Trustees is ill-equipped for the task and lacks the experience, expertise, and qualifications in selecting a qualified interim president replacement for the esteemed Dr. Beverly Walker Graffia, Emeritus. And they are also not qualified to select the next president. Andy Everman does not even hold an associate's degree, and William Brickley's legal background as a lead trial attorney is automobile negligence, employment discrimination, insurance claims, and torts claims of all sorts. He does not have the experience in education or employment law. Mr. Brickley has not advocated on behalf of school districts and community colleges. Mott Community College deserves a board attorney who has spent their career in higher education, not automobile negligence. Mott does not need someone who is learning on the job on the tail end of their career after spending over 30 years chasing car accidents. The roles and responsibility of the chairperson who sits on the Board of Trustees is expected to know and understand the bylaws and policy and to make sure that the board operates on a policy level. Andy Everman does not. He does not understand his role as chairperson, and he absolutely does not understand how to select an interim president or president of a college. Since the current elected Board of Trustees at Mott Community College, led by Chairperson Andy Everman, this board has continued to cancel meetings. At this point, 7 meetings have been canceled. This is unacceptable and unprofessional. It appears as if the board is intentionally canceling the meetings in hopes of limiting public attendance and comments because of the board's inefficiency. Under Andy Everman's leadership, when the meetings are in session, they are chaotic, confusing, and non-productive. Times are changed and locations are moved, making it difficult for Mott employees and the community to stay abreast of the meeting days and times. I am confident this is done intentionally. The special meetings are costing taxpayers money. We have a right to see the financials. We have not forgotten and are still waiting for an apology from Andy Everman for his vulgar and disrespectful words from the very first board meeting. The board must do better. Mott deserves better.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The next comment has been submitted by Bobby Walton of Davison, Michigan, on the topic of selection process for interim president.
Thank you. I think the subject that Art brought up is very appropriate in that trust is very important when it comes to the people we have hired to be what we call trustees. I'm going to read my comments because sometimes when I speak off the cuff, I ramble. This evening, you are working to develop a set of procedures to identify and name a final set of candidates for the position of interim president of Mott Community College. I am here as usual to represent the interests of the community in this process. And I'm going to tell you that the one thing that I will not let you forget is that the community, as expressed through me, has been outraged over the last year over the situation that you presented when you chose your board attorney. I begin by asking for the names of the candidates being considered to be made public at this meeting. I cannot think of a reason under the Open Meetings Act that keeping this a secret is permitted. The public has a right to know your opinion, your options. Next, I will remind you of my open criticism of the apparent corruption of the selection process when you chose Mr. Brickley to be your board attorney. Of the 5 law firms and attorneys interviewed, Mr. Brickley and the firm of Garin Lukow Miller were the weakest in all ways to represent an institution of higher education. But he was the personal attorney for Mr. Everman, and you 4 executive board members chose him. You may understand why I and others have a difficult time trusting you in this current process. I have with me copies of the scoring sheets of the board members who voted as a block to hire Mr. Brickley last December. I understand the process you are considering will be making use of such scoring sheets. I want to remind you that the public now has such a system which can be misused. This scoring system did not meet the needs of students at Mott College. It met the needs of your chair to have a personal aide, a chief of staff, to do his bidding. And I'm going to review the sheets. The first sheets were those of Janet Couch. And I'm not going to read the questions, but there are 14 questions, the last of which is, do you have any questions of us? This first one is the Garin Lukow Miller scoring, and the options are 1 to 5 on each of 2 elements of the questions, and Ms. Couch has scored them all 5s. The second one is Cummings, McClory, Davis, and Acho, and there Ms. Couch has scored them all 1s, which is the absolute lowest score possible. Ms. Couch has scored Plunkett Cooney all 1s, which is the lowest score possible. Ms. Couch has scored Butzel as all 1s, which is the lowest score possible. The next one I have is Jeff Swanson. On Garin Lukow Miller, he scored all 5s except for 2 sets of 4s and a couple of 3s. On Dickinson Wright, 2s, 3s, a couple of 4s, and a 5. CMDA, mostly 3s and 2s with 1 5. Plunkett Coney, 4s and 3s and a couple of 2s and a 1. Wendy Walcott, Garin Lukow Miller, all 5s with a couple of 4s. Dickinson Wright, 2s and 3s, mostly 2s. Cummings, McClory, Davis, and Acho, 2s and 1s. Plunkett, 1 4, mostly 3s and 2s, and a couple of 1s. Butzel, mostly 2s with a few 1s. Andy Everman, Garin Lukow Miller, all 5s. Dickinson Wright, 2s and 1s, mostly 1s. Cummins, McClory, Davis, 2 5s, and all the rest are 1s except for 2 other 5s. Plunkett Coney, 2s and 1s, mostly 1s. And Butzel, mostly 1s with a few 2s. No, mostly 2s with a few 1s. So from looking at these scoring sheets, and I think this was discussed when we had the selection of the attorney last year, it appears that this was a fixed job for one set of interviews to be scored all 5s by 4 people who wind up voting to choose that one lawyer. And all the rest of them are 2s and 1s with a few 3s thrown in, except for Jeff. He did a little bit better on that. I think we have a reason not to trust you when you talk about scoring the interviews for the people that you have coming up.
Mrs. Walton, that's 5 minutes.
The public relies on the honesty and ethical behavior
Thank you
of
very
all of
much.
you.
Your
And what
time
I-
has expired.
Excuse me?
Jordan is the timekeeper. He said your time has expired.
Okay. I
Thank
asked
you very much.
Do not repeat this. Design a fair process.
Jordan, do we have any other comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have one more comment that's been submitted by Paul Jordan on the topic to promote stability in unstable moment, and he's out of Linwood in Flint. In Flint, Michigan. After decades of stability, Mott Community College is at a dangerous moment. The area's most stable public institution now seems unstable. Board meetings are frequently canceled or rescheduled. With no president at the helm, the board decides to suspend its strategic plan with no process or leadership in place to chart a new path. It abandons established board processes and substitutes a procedure made up in the moment. It lowers the minimum standards for the future interim institutional leader. This instability will repel the most qualified and talented candidates for the position of permanent president. I urge you to choose a well-qualified administrator as interim president who already has established working relationships with Mott's employees and the community. I urge you to commit to holding your scheduled meetings. I urge you to return to the college's established procedures and plans. I urge the board to once again lead this college in a competent manner that will inspire confidence in its leadership and in the institution. This is your responsibility, and in this crucial moment, this board is not fulfilling it. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you very much. Next item, review recommendations from the Ad hoc Committee and Personnel Committee related to the search for interim president. Jordan, do you have some information to pass out to the trustees?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have the recommendations from the Ad hoc Committee from Wednesday, June 5th, and then the recommendations from the Personnel Committee on Friday, June 7th.
Why don't we start with the Ad hoc Committee? Thank you. Would the board like a couple of minutes before we move forward to review this? Yes, John. Can you put your microphone on?
As it's been distributed to us, going to be made available to the public.
So Trustee Daly, these are the recommendations from those two meetings that were approved in each committee. They will be a part of the informational reports. At the next regular scheduled meeting, they will be provided to the public.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions about the Ad hoc Committee? So for the public that doesn't know it, yes, Art.
Yeah, in reading this on the first subsection, I don't agree that the candidates receive questions before the interview. I believe that their biographical information we've received, their CV or resume we've received, so we have that basis, but situational questions and questions that we have for them, I don't believe that they should have the questions before the interview. We want to see how they think on their feet.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
During my personnel committee, I'm the one who suggested that we do not do that as well, and that we do have the same exact questions that we all agree upon. I agree. I don't think that somebody should get the questions ahead of time like that, because it's not going to be authentic whatsoever. This is all going to be pre-planned.
So in your committee, you wanted to or didn't want to?
I do not want to have different questions. All the questions should be the same for all candidates.
Okay. So for the first issue, for putting this together, if you make a motion, any one of you, you can do it either way. Do you want the candidates to have the questions prior to coming in, or do you want to blindside them? And do you want to have the attorney give a legal opinion on that? Yes, Mr. Reyes.
I move that the questions do not be given to the candidates prior to the interview.
Support.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have a discussion? Yes, Art?
And it's not blindsiding someone in an interview to ask them a question that they don't know. So I take umbrage to the term blindsiding, because this isn't a gotcha kind of thing. We're trying to find the best interim president for the college. And so them coming in expecting to be asked questions is what an interview is. But us asking them questions that they haven't seen before, I do not believe is blindsiding them.
Any other comments? John?
Mr. Chair, I think Trustee Reyes' motion is a good motion. I look at it from the perspective of, I also want to see how even the interim, how they would think on their feet. And this is not like we're buying a vehicle. This is where we have discrete individuals who have completely different backgrounds. And the board, I believe, needs to have the ability that, yes, there are some standard questions. Most of us have been through interviews, and there are questions that are pro forma. But you run into these differences in experience, education, that may require different questions that are tailored to the needs of the college and are dealt directly with the individual. So for that reason, I'm going to support Trustee Reyes' motion. And thanks for making it, Art.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair. Oh, go ahead.
Again, I have no say on this issue other than the fact that under the Open Meetings Act, members of the public are entitled to come to your meetings, and that would include your interview process. So while you have an interview with candidate A, candidate B could be in the public. They could be sitting here listening to those questions. You can tell them, we're having your interview, candidate A at 5 o'clock, candidate B, we're having you at 6 o'clock, and hope that they don't show up. I'm just telling you that under the Open Meetings Act, the possibility of a candidate coming to a prior interview and seeing how that process goes exists, and you can't use their ability to use that act and be a member of the public against them in your decision-making process with respect to whether you would choose them as your interim or not. That's the only legal issue I wanted to throw in there with respect to that. Other than that, I'll stay out of it.
Thank you. Mr. Daly?
And I'm just drawing on my experience in dealing with interviews that, first of all, if the interview is to take place in closed session, the experience that I've had is that has to be requested by the person being interviewed. And we can't make a unilateral decision that they're going to be in open or closed session. that as a board, everything we do must be in open session. And then the second thing is, and I've been in 2 searches as an applicant, where the position was that if one requested it, then the ability to do the interview in closed session would be given to all of the applicants. In other words, for consistency's sake, to avoid exactly the situation our attorney's identifying. And I'm not a big, especially at a first cut in an interim position, I'm just not a big fan of closed session meetings.
Yes, Wendy?
Again, what I had said, all the questions should be the same. Something that we talked about in the Personnel Committee. Rather, if somebody has questions here, I think that we did discuss possibly HR having questions, taking some of those questions out, and then us as a board putting our own questions in. If anybody has questions, let us know. Let's share them amongst each other. That's where I'm at.
Any other questions or comments? Mr. Freeman?
Yeah, we did discuss this issue during the Personnel Committee meeting, and we simply said that, typically, we can look at people and say, if you're being interviewed, we would appreciate that you not view the other interviews. When I was interviewed by the Land Bank, it was during the pandemic, and everything was Zoom. And they respectfully asked me not to view it, even though other people could view it, because it was an open meeting. I did that, and I would say that most people with any level of integrity would respect that as well, understanding that everybody should be judged on their own merit. And I think that we can ask everyone that they not watch the other interviews, or if it is, public or in Zoom or any other social media, that they come in and they actually answer the questions that we ask, and I think that would be fine.
Any other questions, comments? Yes, John?
Just one comment. I'd like to thank my fellow trustees that participated in either the ad hoc committee or the personnel committee for the work that you put in. I was originally assigned to the ad hoc committee, and I'm getting better, but health reasons precluded me from being involved in that, except for one meeting. And I know that it is a difficult job going through these things and wading through, and I'm glad that we had the support of the HR going through this and at least making the initial cut as far as basic qualifications. So thank you for the time.
You're welcome. Any other comments? Okay. Jordan, would you explain the motion again so everybody understands?
So Trustee Reyes moved that the questions not be provided to the candidates prior to being interviewed. Trustee Freeman seconded the motion.
Okay. Roll call vote. Art?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
Yes? Sue?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Okay, the motion has passed. That the board will not give them their questions ahead of time. Okay. Do we have questions that have been submitted by board members to the attorney for review? Yes, Jeff.
Mr. Chair, I come up with a few for the consideration of the board to see what they thought and if we could use any of them or not use them.
You want to see what?
I've put together a few questions and I can pass them out to,
Fine.
okay.
Jordan, would you assist? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm a little concerned. I understand that we can't publicly say the questions because obviously then everyone will know what the questions are. But at the same time, we're passing around something that is also at a public meeting that is foible, that, I mean, so by passing out these questions, we've in fact made them public, which would require reading of them. So I'm assuming I understand, I mean,
However we want to do it,
yeah, I
that's,
mean.
Mr. Freeman?
Yeah.
Mr. Freeman, please direct your questions to the chair.
So,
And
yeah.
then we can
I
ask the
actually was
board
making
attorney for
I
a
was
legal opinion on
actually,
this.
please allow
Thank you
me to
very
make
much,
my
Michael.
statement. This is the same thing as last time. You shut me down. Are you going to call security again and try and have me removed because I tried to force public
Mr.
comment
Freeman,
where
let's
you
get
should have
back to
done
the
it?
orders of the day.
Yeah, obviously.
The
See,
issue is how
he
we'll
loves
handle
to
this,
control people.
and we need to get an opinion
and
from our
if you don't vote
attorney.
his way.
Mr. Freeman,
I hear you. I hear you.
thank you.
hey,
Better than you hear me.
Attorney,
I'm sorry?
we need an opinion on this. Can we pass these out to be reviewed? And there was some concerns from one of the trustees that they're foible. How do we handle developing the questions now?
So if the board as a whole decides to create questions, then it is a public document. So and then as a public document, it becomes discoverable under the Freedom of Information Act request. To sit here in the public meeting and to discuss question A, B, C, or D obviously becomes part of the record. It is public. So there is nothing in the Open Meetings Act which indicates that you have to, in advance, develop your questions for a potential candidate. I understand why you want to do that. You want to have uniformity in everything, but there's nothing that requires that. So you are in a bit of a quandary there with respect to, on the one hand, trying as a board total to come together here, develop a set of questions that are consistent, but at the same time prevent the candidates from knowing exactly what those are. Because as a board, if you do take that step and you all say, okay, these are the 10 questions we're going to ask, these are the 12 questions we're going to ask, whatever it is public. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I understand the quandary you're in.
Okay, so as I understand it, and for the board, Jeff, you're not going to hand these out. And each board member is going to have to create their own question, correct? And it needs to be vetted by legal counsel so we don't get in trouble. Is that correct?
So if you wish, I can look at questions to see if they are questions you should not be asking as violating some law. I would not in any way vet the questions with respect to the appropriateness towards, what information you're trying to seek. So if that's the process you wish to do, I will be glad to participate in it. Otherwise, if there's another process you want to utilize, that's fine. Again, that is your decision, and that's what you're here to do today, is to discuss amongst yourselves and to try to come up with this process that you want to engage in.
Okay. So each trustee will need to create their own questions. And I would entertain a motion at this point that we have these done by Monday of this coming week, which would be the 17th, and they can be reviewed and make sure that we don't have any problems with them. And whatever the question is from whatever board member, those are the ones you're going to stay with at the meeting. Yes, I'm entertaining a motion if you guys would like to do that.
Can I ask a comment?
Yes.
I understand, and I do, the Attorney Brinkley's position and what he's articulating in this. But we're really dealing with a hybrid situation here. First of all, there are questions that will be asked that are largely pro forma questions. And I certainly don't have a problem with those questions that are pro forma questions, with them having the answer, because whether they have the question or not, they still have to respond in an appropriate manner. But there are other questions, for instance, when you're in the process of the interview, something arises that you need to have additional information about, and you need to ask that question as a follow-up type thing. Those situations occur quite frequently, and that type of thing, obviously, the board would have no knowledge of it. So as we're putting this together, remember, we've got this kind of push-me, pull-me beast with these questions. There are some questions in there which are just simply, confirming that you meet the qualifications of this, for the job. And then there are other questions that will occur as an output from the interview. And as a trustee, I look at our responsibility is to use whatever means we have available to us to find out as much as we can about the person we're talking to, and then make the decision that's appropriate to get the best qualified person in the position that will support the mission of the college. And I don't think we will ever be able to come up with a block of universal questions that applies to everything, and it won't work well other than getting just some basic information about the about the employee. So that's all I have to comment on.
Any other comments? Yes, Jeff?
While I understand the attorney's position, I'm not trying to cause trouble here. I thought we wanted to ask them all the same questions to start with. And as a board, that needs to be 7 of us coming up with questions of what we'll do and what won't do. So I'm not sure how to proceed here as far as the questions go.
Well, I think
Right now, by Monday, you will submit your questions that you would like to ask to the board attorney, so that by Monday, he can get back with you and tell you that wouldn't be appropriate one. He's going to decide on the legality of the question, not the appropriateness, but the legality. Is that correct, attorney?
I can do that if you wish, yes.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
You go ahead. You were,
So are we just all going to ask a couple questions apiece of the applicants, and ask the same question to every applicant?
well,
We can submit them, but where does it go from there? What do we do from there? We need to decide that.
and how much time? We have to decide how much time we're going to give for each candidate, and we'll also need to decide the time for each question. So we give a question, and you have 3, 5, 10 minutes to answer it. So we'll have to decide that this evening also. John, you had a question.
not a question so much. The way I envision this is that when we have that, there will be a block of questions, or what I consider to be the pro forma questions about the individual, and we're interested at that point because we need to know more about them than just some paperwork. And we want to see how they respond, what the level of principally oral communication skills are. That's an opportunity. As we get through that, and that's in the first portion of the interview, then there are follow-on questions that will come principally from the information that the applicant has provided to us during the course of the interview. I would hope that while the interview is being undertaken, that not only would we have a legal representative there in form of our legal counsel, but also someone from HR that's knowledgeable in this area. And if someone inadvertently asks a question that's inappropriate, then I would expect one of those 2 representatives to say something and say, that's not an appropriate question, and that's not something, once they make that call, that it's up for grabs. We move to the next question or the next person. That's my comment.
Yes, Michael.
Through the chair. So, yeah, I wonder how many people looked at the questions that were asked in the last time we interviewed, because we did go through those questions at the Personnel Committee, which was asked to review, make recommendations on process, as well as, recommend people. I see ad hoc did it as well, which I'm still confused about, but suffice to say, I believe that Trustee Daly is absolutely correct, that you get these broader questions which are uniform, that go to everybody, and that is the opportunity where you can go a little bit off script, and you can start drilling down on, what do you mean by that? Can you give us a further example? And being a little bit broad is a good thing, and actually the list of questions that we had, I think, that were developed by HR were adequately broad to allow for a person to answer the question, but also to provide, us the opportunity to do that drill down where you can actually start asking, what do you mean by that? So I think the questions actually are fairly well written. They comply with human resources and the law on how you can actually interview a person. I see, we're belaboring a point that, quite honestly, it's work that's been done, and I don't understand why we necessarily have to reinvent the wheel when we can actually have more individualized questioning that will come along within the process. I would actually, too, like to not only, we've kind of gone over the ad hoc recommendations, but I think that Sue and Wendy and myself came up with some other pretty good recommendations as well. In particular, in addressing the background check of the individuals. No one at this table is really skilled or qualified to do that level of background check. We found out that we do still have an active contract with the Poly Group, which did the last presidential search, and they're one of maybe two specialists when it comes to higher ed and community college headhunting and recruitment. We could simply do a change order within their pre-existing contract to say, once we come up with our recommendations of who we'd like, who we're thinking about, that they could actually perform that, necessary background check on our behalf. And that will expedite some of the process for us as we look at the interim. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes?
Mr. Chair, one of the other things, Michael, that we had talked about with, as well as with Sue, as far as giving each candidate a certain amount of time, we had asked HR, what is the normal time frame? And they said between an hour, is Rebecca here? I believe an hour and 15 minutes is what they allow. So my recommendation is we would do the same, not saying that it's going to be that, but it does allow for enough time for each candidate.
Jeff?
So am I assuming that the HR did come up with a list of questions? So would there be a chance that we can get a look at those?
I guess I have a question about that, myself as chair. So the HR came up with questions, and what's that, Mr. Freeman? Mr. Freeman, please turn your microphone on.
Yeah, this was 10 years ago when they did the presidential search. The last time after, when Dr. Schenk left the college, they actually did have a pre-existing list of questions that we were able to use.
Okay. So what's your question?
Will we be able to review those? They're 10 years old. I don't think that's going to hurt a thing, is it? No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, John?
Yeah, I was intrigued by Trustee Freeman's sharing with us that contract for personnel search for a president was still in place. And, when it comes to finding a president, for a community college, most of us, except for Trustee Freeman, are rank amateurs. And even that, his experience was 10 years ago. And I think having some input from a firm that is still under contract with the college and does this as a matter of day-to-day livelihood would be beneficial in ensuring the board that we're asking questions that are, first of all, being asked to presidential candidates that they've dealt with in the past, and also that they're asked in an appropriate manner. So I would hope that we would pursue the updating of that contract and look at how we, particularly as we're moving to the presidential search, get them involved in that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Any other questions? Mr. Reyes?
Yeah, do we need a motion to engage Angela Pauley with the Pauley Group to perform the reference and background checks for the top interim candidates?
Would you repeat that because it just echoed in my thing?
Yeah, one of the recommendations from the Personnel Committee was to engage Angela Pauley with the Pauley Group to perform the reference and background checks for the top interim candidates. Do we need a motion to make that happen? If so, I so move.
That we have a motion for background checks
To
on
be
the
done
5
by
candidates.
the Pauley Group, yes.
Okay. So there was also we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion. This was also brought up at the ad hoc committee. There were a couple of options that we had for that, which was human resources, our police department. There's an agency out of Lansing that does this. We could use it blended. What's the flavor of the board for this?
We're going to vote on the motion that's on the floor, though, correct?
So we've got a motion on the floor
Yes.
that we do a background check on the 5 candidates.
It also includes the name of the organization.
Yes.
Okay.
The
Did you-
motion is to engage Angela Pauley with the Pauley Group to perform the reference and background checks for the top interim candidates.
Okay.
That's my motion. And that's what was seconded by John or
Okay.
Wendy.
Trustee Wolcott seconded it.
Okay.
Yep.
So, is it not the Pauley Group that was used when we hired Dr. Beverly? Yes?
It was, yes.
It was the Pauley Group that we used when we hired Dr. Beverly. Okay. Excuse me. John, do you have something to share with us? Wendy? Okay. Yes, Michael?
Yeah, point of clarification too, like with the Poly Group, she basically did the grunt work on behalf of the board. She was the one who like organized for us, we made the decision. We chose, right? At the end of the day, we had 4 candidates. We decided who we wanted. She just helped us do all this, coordinated with our human resources department, but she knows the network. She knows everybody in the entire country. And so that's why it was very helpful for us. And it's a heavier lift than one thinks. So I think having that sort of support is a really good thing.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just if I could, just to follow up a little bit on what Trustee Freeman is. Any HR hunter that you use is not going to want to make a recommendation on this is the one. And the reason is because they're then assuming the risk that you hire someone and 6 years later they turn out to be a crook or they don't have the appropriate background or something like that. They may come up with a list of candidates that are qualified on criteria that's been established by the board. But in the cases that I have been in, when you get to that level, that final decision of who is going to be interviewed and even as a one step before who's going to be asked to take the job, that all falls directly on the board.
So, questions that we must consider. How long will it take? Is this something you want done before the interviews?
Point of order. We have a motion on the floor.
It's a question about your motion. I'm wondering, how long is this going to take? Do we do this before we have the meeting on the 24th? Would they have enough time to get it completed? And, do you know? Yes, Michael?
I don't think anyone knows unless you actually ask the person. So you're asking probably the wrong people. If you say this is your timeline, you ask the consultant to say, can you complete this? What are the steps which would be required? If we say we have 5 candidates, we'd like to do background checks and then complete the process, then they will let you know exactly when that's done.
The other thing we need to consider is the depth of the background. Do we want to know that they stole somebody's chewing gum in 3rd grade? Sounds ridiculous, but how far back are we going to go? The way the motion reads now, background checks, but what are we expecting?
Ours is not to figure out what every expert in their field is supposed to do. Ours, at this point, is in the motion, is to tell them that we want them to run the background check and reference checks for those people that we've deemed to be the top candidates. Not, we want to know what they did in 3rd grade, we want to know that their 6th grade teacher liked them. No, they know how to do background checks and reference checks. They know how to do that. And what we're doing is acting as a governing board and saying, we're contracting to this group to do the job. And then we take that information and it helps us make our decision. So no, we don't have to, as the maker of the motion, that is not part of the motion. The motion is to engage Angela Pauley with the Pauley Group to perform the reference and background checks for the top interim candidates.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I call a question.
The motion is called. All those in favor of calling the question signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The question is, will we select the Pauley Group?
Mr. Chair,
Yes?
can we just clarify that all members present voted aye for that motion?
Well,
That all members voted aye for that motion? Can we make sure that's clarification that all members voted aye?
all of us, yeah, we all voted aye.
Okay.
That we were going to call the question to vote on it. Now we're going to vote on it, and that will be a roll call vote.
So
Mr.
point,
Rick?
so
Yes.
point of clarification. So there was no vote on that motion then?
What's that?
There was no vote on that motion?
That was not a vote on the motion. The motion was called by Mr. Daley. By Robert's Rules of Order, we have to decide whether or not we're calling. So we're calling, he's called the question. We have now voted that we are going to go ahead and vote on the question.
Is there a second for that? There's no second. There's no second, okay, thank you.
Roll call vote. You ready, Jordan? John?
Yes.
Art?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Jeff?
Well, the only issue I have no problem with them doing that, but this is a time-sensitive matter. And if it's going to take 6 months or a year, it shouldn't take that long. Well, not knowing that, I will vote nay.
No. Wendy?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
No. The motion passed. So we will engage that Angeline Pauley group to perform that group. Now, attorney, who do we have handle engaging that for us? Do we have you do that?
No, I think you would have your.
Human Resources will do that for us? Okay. All right. Next question. Do we want to use a grading scale, a rubric, as we interview the candidates?
Have we moved to item number 5 on the agenda? Or are we still on number 4?
We're still on item 4, recommended from the ad hoc committee and the personnel committee. Okay. The 5 candidates have been recommended. There are no other candidates that will be brought forward other than those 5. Is that what the board wishes? Okay,
No,
moving along.
What?
Yes.
no, that wasn't what you asked. The first time you asked about
Well, the
a metric, and then you...
Personnel Committee was charged with selecting the 5 candidates for us. At the previous meeting, it was determined that the ad hoc committee would not make any suggestions, and we would not bring forth any at this meeting. So
Mr.
we have
Chair.
5 candidates.
That's not what he's talking about.
Is that
You
not
had-
what you want?
No.
I'm okay with whatever you guys
No,
want to do.
that's not what he just said. He asked about the grading scale. That's what we're on right now. And then
Okay,
you had
you're
jumped
still
to
on the
other-
grading scale. I'd moved along.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay?
I make a motion that as well, if we have the questions which are going to be asked, there actually is a grading metric that went along with that, that was developed, that was pretty user-friendly. I think it might have been like 1 through 5 or something like that. But if we want to be expeditious about this, we could just use what we already have. It wasn't custom-made or tailored to anybody specific. It was a general search. I think we could use, my motion is that we use the same questions and grading metric that we used the previous time.
Second?
Okay. A moment ago, we weren't going to use the same questions. Now we're going to use the same questions. Is this a conflict, Mr. Attorney?
There's no legal issue here. The discussion related to developing the questions, and I believe the discussion was that HR had a list of questions. Mr. Swanson had questions because he had not seen those questions yet and wondered how relevant they still were, but I don't believe there was any vote on whether you guys were going to proceed using that format or not.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second. Is there any questions or comments on this?
Yes, I'd like to ask, I know, are we voting on the scoring system now? And you are saying that we do the same thing we did last time? That's what we're voting on?
Complements the questions. So there's already a metric that's already created that will actually do that. So you can grade.
We-
Sorry, let's do that.
Yes.
Okay. John?
Okay, I'm a bit confused, and I had thought that we had just had a discussion about using an existing HR specialist that's external to us that was used before. And I think before we get too far down the road of the search methodology, we ought to see what they have to contribute, because again, it's been 10 years since they last did, as I understand it, had involvement with us. And they may have a better search vehicle than just one. And I'm a little reluctant to categorically just grab the last one if we're going to employ a headhunter to assist us.
Right.
Mr. Freeman?
What I would say, if there's anything, like let's say if it's about technology or something like that, that might have changed in the past 10 years that we would have questions about, that we would also ask Ms. Pauley to do a refresh for us. Like maybe she could look at the questions that we have and make any recommendations for any sort of update that would be more current with trends within community colleges, whatnot. And it wouldn't be that much work for her to do. I mean, yeah.
My apologies. I just want to be sure that we don't dismiss inputs from the people that are most qualified to be able to oversee a search for a president. That's all.
But Michael, your motion, would you make that motion again?
Yeah, it was second.
I can restate the motion if you'd like.
So we have a motion, we have a second, and it's to use a rubric or group
So
of grading.
Trustee Freeman motion that we use the same questions and grading metric that we used the previous time with Trustee Swan, or Trustee Reyes seconding the motion.
I'll amend the motion to pending review by Angela Pauley and our approval.
Yeah, I second that.
Any other comments? Roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, can I restate the motion one more time? So Trustee Freeman motion that we use the same questions and grading metric that we used the previous time pending review by Angela Pauley and with board approval.
For her recommendations. Yeah, she'll review it, provide recommendation, and we approve.
Pending review of her recommendations.
So we're going to need some assistance from our human resource. Could you please come up to assist us?
Did you ask me a question?
You raised your hand. Your counterpart
it's,
did.
the Poly Group, but it's Angela Provart, Provart. And may I continue?
Please do.
Oh, okay. The contract that we have with her is to conduct reference checks, a deep dive of reference checks, but we can ask for an amendment for the background checks. But I'm not sure about whether her, she would be open to reviewing anything else as part of the search, because usually you go through an RFP process to identify a search firm for the full search, if that makes sense.
Mr. Freeman, please use your microphone.
But we can request it.
Does anyone at the college have any connection with this group?
What's the question?
Does anyone at this college have any connection with this group?
With the Poly Group? Me specifically?
No. You know who these people are. You know somebody to contact. Does somebody at the college have that ability where we have somebody, a contact with the group?
With the Poly Group?
Yes.
Yes, I've worked directly with
Thank you.
Angela.
That's what I'm asking.
Oh, I didn't understand your question.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
We've worked with her directly,
Okay.
and I have too.
Okay, thank you. That's what I'm trying to
Okay.
feather out.
No problem.
Thank you. Any other questions before she sets down? Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any other questions or comments? Yes, Jeff.
Could you read that motion again, just to make sure what it says?
So Trustee Freeman motion that we use the same questions and grading metric that we used the previous time pending review by Angela Provart and board approval of her recommendations. Trustee Reyes seconded the motion.
Okay. Well, Mr. Daly, do you have something to share with us? Wendy?
I thought we just voted on the question thing. Didn't we already do that, though? Why are we
haven't
grouping this
voted on it
together?
yet.
No, we never.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Reyes?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Sue?
No.
John?
Yes.
Wendy?
I'm just going to tell my reasoning. After what I just graciously, by somebody in the audience, blasted me about this grading scale, I absolutely do not want it, and I want to stay away from it.
Is that
That's
a no?
that's a no, correct?
That is a no.
Jeff?
No.
And my vote is a no. That motion failed. So we will not be using a grading scale. Okay? Next thing to discuss.
Point of information, Mr.
Point
Chair.
of information.
So with trustee Reyes' motion from previously to engage Angela Pauley, should that be corrected to use the correct name of Provart?
Well, since the motion failed, it doesn't
This
matter.
is the previous motion.
The previous motion. We'll need to correct, so we have got the correct wording for that.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to make sure we have amended that correctly with Robert's Rules of Order?
A motion is not required.
Okay, thank you. Wendy, is there anything else from your committee meeting that needs to come forward? You'll have it on your document. Is there anything that you would like to bring forward?
I don't believe so. Michael, Sue, was there anything else that we're missing? We went over the length of time, how we were going to do the process. What am I missing? He asked if there's anything else that we're missing that we want to go over in our committee. We did do that, yeah, we just finished that. I think that's it.
Okay. The next thing we need to do is go into closed session. And
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
that's not a part of the agenda, or that's on the agenda, but that's not until item 8.
oops,
Does that mean you're technically only on 4 right now?
okay, correct. Item number 5 on the agenda. Consider
Number-
trustee
you're in-
recommendations for interim president candidates.
Mr. Chair, does that mean item number 4 is concluded?
Is there anything else that we need to bring back from the ad hoc committee? Jeff, you were in the ad hoc committee. Is there anything on there that you want to bring forward that we talked about? For example, time, how much time we'll give for each question?
Well, this is a time-sensitive issue. Expediency is the key. You know, we want to get a good candidate, but we want to do it in a timely fashion.
How much time do we want to spend for each candidate? That was my question.
Whatever they recommend is fine with me. Hour to hour, I think an hour and a half's a little much, but, you know, I
For
think.
each question.
Mr. Chair, we already spoke about this.
What's that?
We already spoke about this. In our personnel committee, our recommendation was, through the chair, our recommendation was that we spoke with Human Resources, and they said between an hour and 15 minutes per
Okay.
candidate,
So,
and we agreed on that.
with each question, my question to you folks is, how much for each question? We've got an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. How much time should we give for each question?
So we answer the questions. If they only get through 5 or 6 of them, right? Are we done? We move on, that's it. This is how much time they are allowed.
I want the board to decide what you want for each question. Yes, Art?
That's a simple matter of mathematics. If we have 10 questions and it's an hour, then there's 6 minutes per question on average. If they take 8 minutes on one and they take 4 minutes on another, then it's still 6 minutes per question. So that's just a matter of mathematics. We don't have the number of questions that we have. So saying that we're going to interview for between an hour and an hour 15 minutes, that gives plenty of time for whatever questions that we have. But to say that each question is going to be 10 minutes, and they only use 7 minutes of it, that's just getting into the minutia that I don't think is necessary.
It's minutia, Art, I agree with that, but I want to make sure we're all on the same page and it's not left unsaid, that if somebody wants something specifically. Yes, Jeff?
I agree with Art on hour to hour and 15, I guess. Overall, I would be in agreement with that.
Good. So, John?
One of the things that we want to see is how these people function under pressure. So tell them at the start of the interview that how much time they have for the total interview and how many questions they're going to be asked, and let them manage their own time, and let's see how they do it.
Okay. I prefer the open dialogue on this so we come up with what we want and everybody's ideas, so nothing's left unsaid. Yes, Wendy?
I agree with Dr. Daly. I think that we should tell them they have an hour and 15, if that's, we already decided on that. It's up to them, how long they decide to take on each question.
Yeah, and if they run themselves out of time in the process of this, that's their problem.
Okay.
And I think we're trying to be too rigid in this structure. We're interviewing 5 people, and maybe, I don't know. And
the goal here, John, is to do no harm to any candidate. Also to make sure all concerns from board members are alleviated now, that we leave nothing unsaid, nothing unasked. So where it may seem like minutia to Art, somebody else may have a concern and wanted to hear something. So that's why I'm trying to make sure everyone has an opportunity to have input.
I understand that. We should, that while we're in the interview process, whether it be for this or the president, there needs to be a burden placed on the person that's being interviewed to conform to the rules of the process. And we should not attempt to solve that for them. In doing so, we're making decisions that they should be making, and we want to see how they do it. And we may decide that we want to talk about it longer. And I believe that would be within the board's prerogative to do so on a specific question. So I'm a little concerned that I don't want us to get too locked in to a specific time clock process where we have a great conversation going and we need to find this, and then all of a sudden now we've got to stop because, well, way back when we decided we were going to limit them to 5 minutes. We don't know what they're going to say, and we don't know how valuable it is. If they've got something to say that's whether they're selected or not, I am a thief for experience. And if someone comes in with a good idea that I think we can use at Mott Community College, I'm not going to really beat it to death there, but I want to find out a little bit more about it before we dismiss them.
Thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So for 4 years, I was board chair, and I was reminded consistently that my job was to run the meeting and to make sure that we're observing Robert's rules. And I'm kind of concerned, as a point of order, that the conversation is being led by you versus allowing us the opportunity to discuss and have our own opinions. And in particular, when votes are called, I feel like it's leading the witness too, where if it's not a vote that probably you're in favor of, how you consistently have been going, are you sure? Is this how you're voting? Like double checking everybody. So I would ask that you do your job as board chair and limit your dialogue unless you decide that you want to step away from chairing the meeting and then become part of the regular conversation. So at that point, you would turn the chair over to Trustee Couch, and then you could have further engagement in this. But I feel like you're really kind of monopolizing the conversation here, and which is not correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freeman. As you know, if you may have noticed, I do have a problem hearing. I also have an earpiece in that does not work very well. So quite often, things get muffled. I can't tell what people said for sure. So I am message checking. If that's a problem, that's your problem, not mine. I would not make fun of somebody because they wear glasses, but it's okay to make fun of somebody who has a problem hearing.
Mr. Chair, I would...
Gentlemen, could we follow the orders of the day?
Yeah.
Let's get back to the orders of the day since we're done insulting each other. Jordan, was there anything else that needed to come forward from item number 4 that we needed to share at this time?
I'm not unsure of the question you're asking.
Yes, I'm asking if there was any other information at this point that needed to be shared with the rest of the board that took care of item 4. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Are you,
Item 5,
just point of clarification. So are we moving on to item number 5 then?
yes, we're now moving to item 5. Consideration trustee recommendations for interim president. Yes, sir.
Is the Personnel Committee going to tell us their 5, or how is this going to consider trustees' recommendations for interim president? I mean, I have the ones that I think, that, that I mark yes and no, but how are we going to vote on the 5 that the Personnel Committee recommended or recommends? And then is there room for another?
The decision of this board at the previous meeting was to let the Personnel Committee to select 5. The prior motion had been that this board, if we wanted to, would bring further candidates forward. But the board decided that they didn't want to do that. They voted that they would let personnel. So we've got 5 candidates. That's what the board did.
Can I find out who those 5 are?
Can you, I'm sorry, it muffled.
I don't know who the 5 are. I'm asking what the recommendation is.
All I know was that there's some letters that they are.
Yes, but I don't know those letters.
Okay.
That's the thing. I'm asking for the recommendations of the Personnel Committee.
Okay. So, you can, I don't think this is a legal question. I think this is where we go now. But we can release the letters, right?
Sure.
Okay. So Wendy, that's your job to release the letters.
So just so everyone knows that all of the candidates that we were giving, everything was blacked out. We didn't have any names, addresses. We don't know if they're male or female. The letters that were selected were B as in Bob, P as in Paul, J as in Jack, T as in Tom, and K as in Ken.
Okay. One of the things personnel did was they redacted all the names from the resumes, any information that would lend somebody from knowing who a candidate is. That is probably, in my opinion, that is a good idea. That way, there's no favoritism. There's none that we say, we selected this one because of their name. So those are our candidates. I don't know if any of those are employed and maybe trying to don't want their employer to know that they're looking. So I don't know if we release names or have the names released at this point. Yes, John?
Mr. Chair, in order to open this for appropriate discussion, I'm recommending that the candidates recommended by the Personnel Committee be accepted.
Okay, we got a motion for the 5 candidates that have been recommended by
Second.
personnel. We have a second.
Second.
Well, we've got 2 seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote. Art?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And myself, yes. So we have 5 candidates. They will be notified by personnel, correct?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
What's that? Yes?
When will it be available to the board where we can find out who these letters are and the names of everyone?
Personnel, can you help us with that? And you could come to the microphone, it's easier.
Once we contact them to let them know that they're a finalist, we can release the names. So it'd be helpful to know when you would like that to happen.
Okay. So from a board standpoint, once they let them know, when do you want it to be released? John?
Mr. Chair, I think that we need to get confirmation from the candidates because this is a process that's dynamic and it's ongoing, and you may, when HR contacts a candidate, they may very well find that they're not interested or they've accepted a position elsewhere in the interim time. And so then there's a question, then do we just go with 4 or do we come back to the board to include some? That would be a question I think that would have to be addressed by the board at that time. So certainly this is the 17th. There should be, we have a regularly scheduled meeting on the 24th.
Yes.
I would think that would be enough time for you to contact these people and make a secure list. I would also, as a matter of just happenstance, I'm glad to see that the community is interested in what the efforts that we're undertaking here. And I think it would help if we can, as we're going through here, and Jordan, I realize this is going to be included in our minutes, but documents like this should be available to the public at the beginning of the meeting at least, so that as we're discussing it, the public can follow along with what our discussion is. And as a result, I don't want to be out of order, but I would recommend that the document we were given tonight that was just simply a summary of what was, broad summary of what was discussed, be posted electronically so that people can take a look at it. Okay. That's a motion, by the way.
Okay, so
Second.
we've got a motion from, don't go away. We've got a motion for John that the documents will be made available. Did you get the motion, John?
Trustee Daly, what were the documents specifically that you're trying to include in the motion?
Make sure, John?
Yes?
Jordan needs to make sure the document that you're talking about that you want.
This, okay. So could you restate the motion then?
I recommend that this document be posted electronically as soon as possible so that the public, and be made available to the public.
And the second was from Wendy, correct? Wendy, I can't hear you. All I can do is hear you laughing. See you.
I think Art said it before I did.
Okay, I need some help, Jordan, because I don't know who seconded. You seconded, okay.
All right, so Trustee Daly motion to recommend that the document provided during the special meeting be provided to the public electronically as soon as possible. And Trustee Ray seconded it.
And
John, would you use your microphone?
It's on, I'm sorry. That any pertinent documents in the discussion be made available to the public before the meeting in which they're being considered.
And so just,
That's a second motion.
well, we still have the first motion.
First
but-
to vote on the first
So
motion.
just a point of clarification, so this document right here, this is simply the recommendations that were approved by the committee. They will be included as part of the unofficial minutes from those meetings and be put out for the public at the next regular meeting for their consumption. So it'll be, so they'll be, I'm just, just making you aware that that will be available to the public too. So the unofficial minutes.
Well, I want it available to the public as soon as possible.
Right, but I just wanted to give clarification
Yeah.
from what I said, so,
Okay.
okay.
You see where I'm coming from?
Yeah, so the first motion is trustee Daly motion to recommend that the document provided during the special meeting be provided to the public electronically as soon as possible. Trustee Reyes seconded the motion.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Roll call vote. Jeff?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Art?
Yes?
Michael?
Yes.
Sue?
Yes.
And myself, Sue. Passed unanimously. John, you had a second motion you wanted to make there?
No, it got included in the...
Please use the microphone.
Documents like this would be made available to the public prior to the start of the meeting, which they should be anyway.
Okay.
How to get lynched.
Okay, moving along. We have the candidates, and you will notify them, and then after they're notified, they'll be published,
Yes.
okay? And about how long will that take? Today's Thursday, so are we looking at publishing them by when?
We could do that no later than next Wednesday.
It'll take to the next Wednesday before they're published, so the community will know by then.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Are there any other questions at this time for Human Resources? Yes, John?
Mr. Chair, just out of curiosity, how do you want to handle the release of the interim president names of the candidate for individual president to the media? What's the process for that?
We can post them to the website. We should be able to do that. Or we can wait to announce them at the board meeting as you suggested earlier.
Well, we're going to have them in on the 24th for the interview.
Okay.
So we have, get the calendar. We will have about 5 days. From you're saying the 19th is when you would have everybody contacted, correct? Is that what
Yes.
you told me?
If
Okay.
Wednesday is the 19th, I don't have my calendar.
It
Okay.
is, but I believe that's the day the school is closed.
Yeah,
College is
you don't
closed that
want-
day.
That's,
John, you
If
had
I
a
could,
question?
just a discussion point. I don't believe you want, that this needs to be done with expediency, just because of the fact that the media at the place where the candidates are living, if it's not in Flint, will want to know this as well, and they will have questions. So whatever the vehicle is, it's going to get us the fastest release of the names once that's been confirmed. That's what I believe we should do. Just get it out there and let everybody know.
Okay, we good?
yes.
Any other questions for Human Resources? Yes, Art?
No, it's not for Human Resources. I have a question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Art, you had another question, comment?
Yeah, you just alluded to us interviewing on the 24th.
That's our board meeting date.
Yeah, it's our
That
board
was when
meeting.
we
That's
had
our
planned
board
on
meeting
doing
day.
these
We have a full
originally.
agenda already.
What's that?
have a full agenda for our regular board meeting, and then we're talking about 6 hours on top of that?
Okay. We can call a special meeting for the 21st. That's Friday.
The background checks, will the background checks be done at that point? I mean, there's no reason to,
We have to the 1st of June, 1st of July, to get our mission accomplished. So we can call the meeting on the 26th, or we can call it later that week of the 24th.
later in the week of the 24th would be better, in my opinion.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, John. Wait. Freeman had his hand up first.
Through the chair, I know we want to get stuff done quickly and expeditiously, but sometimes when you do stuff really fast, you make mistakes. We can't afford to make any mistakes here in interim or the longer term. I think that we should be diligent. We should be effective. I know we want to get this thing done, but this July 1 is being thrown around as this drop-dead date, but quite honestly, we could just have somebody appointed until the interim is designated. We could appoint somebody until we have finalized what we've done. We say July 1 has to be done. That's not really true. We have to have somebody running the college, but for the interim, which I believe the interim selection is really important because it's going to take us longer than people think to really do it right. I want to have the college president who's here for the next 10 plus years. And so that takes time. I know we'd love to have somebody there by, for the fall semester. That might not happen, and we have to prepare for that. And so when we give ourselves these arbitrary deadlines, we're just setting ourselves up. We look like we're not being very diligent in what we're doing. My goal is to find the best person for the next 10 years. So I would rather have an interim to the interim, which could last as long as December, but essentially we have a full staff of people that have been running the college effectively, that know their jobs, that, there's no reason why we can't have a week or two extra. The college is not going to fall apart if we designate somebody at the next meeting, knowing that we have another 6 hours that we're going to have to meet. There's no reason why we can't, at that meeting, then say, what's our game plan for the next couple weeks? Because then we'll know how long this is going to take. We'll talk to Angela, we'll talk to other people. We'll create a good timeline where we're doing the right research, we're asking the right questions, we're getting the right people before us. And the faster you move, the more suspect you look. And obviously, we've heard some feedback from the community here today that they want us to be transparent, above board, do a good job. So, cramming in a bunch of special meetings only looks like a desperate, fast search that probably it looks as if we already have a decision made, which we don't. No one here, I will attest to the fact, no one here has told me who to vote for, who do you think, this is the person we should gun for. Right, we're doing our job. Let's not look like we're not.
Mr. Chair.
John, just a minute. Maybe John had a question.
I think your comments are right on the mark. The only thing is that I would stress is in my mind, the appointment of an interim president or a president as a follow-on manner are so important to the future of the college that they should be dealt with not as an item on the regularly scheduled business meeting, but in a standalone meeting where that's the only thing we're looking at.
Yes, Wendy.
And I just want to be sure it didn't get buried in a big meeting schedule.
Wendy?
Would it be possible that we push our board meeting back toward the end of that next week?
I was looking, after Art had made his comment, I was looking at somewhere from the 26th to the 28th. Therefore,
Mr. Gothrop is not here, but Mr. Gothrop has to, oh, is he? So he can tell you further, but he has a legal posting that he has to make at least 6 days in advance of the meeting related to the budget and millages and the like. So that has to go out and be posted at a certain point in time. So changing your meeting on the 24th could be problematic as it relates to the legal requirements that you have to meet regarding the financial issues. Did I state that accurately, Mr. Gothrop?
You did,
Okay.
Attorney
Just a minute, Larry.
Oh, yep.
So the meeting on the 24th, the regular meeting, which, as Art correctly pointed out, has a large agenda, the information that needs to be approved would be approved on the 24th. Does that not give you adequate time?
Yeah, 24th at 5:30 is what was posted.
Yeah, and then a special meeting would take place after that to do the interviews for the candidates for president, which doesn't include, your project should be done by the 24th then, of getting approval, correct?
Yeah, the budget hearing, we have to have it at that day and time. That's been posted, that's all. So the rest of this, you guys are talking about special meetings, as long as we hold our board meeting, or the trustees meeting, have the budget hearing, adopt the millage and the budgets on that day, at that time, or not at 5:30, but we hold that meeting, then we're good.
I understand that. That's why I'm thinking that we go to a day later in the week, and Art had pointed out that the reviews might not be back from the investigator. So I think we've got your stuff covered. Thank you. Wendy, you had a question.
No, he answered it. So we could
Okay.
still push it back. That was my question. So we still have to have the budget hearing on the 24th.
Yeah, so that stays. John?
A couple of things, sir. I have what I call Daly's theory of boards functioning.
You have what?
I have what's called Daly's theory of board functioning. And that's that the board functions at its best and its most efficiency, at its most efficient level, 30 minutes after, for a 30-minute period after the gavel goes down. And after that, it's an ever-steepening decline in the performance of the board. And that's not singling out any board. That's any group of people, any board I've ever been on. And I think we need to really be careful about where we're with a forethought, we're scheduling a 5.5-hour meeting, because automatically the flags go up for me about how tired are we going to be when we're making these decisions. And I think you might perhaps want to look at how we can repackage some of this. I mean, I know we're behind, and I understand finance's position that there are things that need to be passed, but how can we do that? And do that in a manner that ensures that the quality of decision-making by the board is still good, and that's going to amount to some prioritization, what should come first. And and again, I stress that I truly believe that the appointment of the interim and the final selection for president should be done in a manner that, while it is expedient, it isn't done, we do it with due diligence. I mean, I've had one case where the organization I was in did not do due diligence. It was with the best of thought that they did what they did, and it wound up costing us almost $1 million by the time it was all said and done. So this is a situation where I think we need to take a step back and take a look and say, okay, how do we accomplish this in a manner that's prudent and still staying with that objective of having the best person that we can find coming to my community college to be the captain of the ship.
Any other comments? Okay, So we will have our regular meet on the 24th. We will not do interviews on the 24th, but Human Resources, when do you think, do you have an estimate of when they might have the evaluations back for us?
Well, this is only a guess, because I would need to speak with them, but normally it takes at least 10 days to do a deep dive of reference checking, and they can do the background checks simultaneously.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Through the chair, may I address the
Can you
HR
what?
rep? Through the chair, can I address the HR rep?
Yes?
In the past, when I've operated on a time schedule, one of the things they did was they would go ahead and put the background search in play, and if there was going to be a condition or an offer of employment made, then there was a stipulation in that order that there had to be a successful completion of the background search as a condition of doing that. And so I'm assuming this is a large organization. You hire a bunch of people, and you can do that. That's obviously not the first choice, but it would be one that I would see that if we needed to use that tool, that I believe the HR department could help us in doing that. So,
Yes,
okay.
I agree.
So, to do John, as I'm understanding, the deep dive into the background could wait until after we've appointed, but we could do a cursory background check. There's an officer here tonight, Becker. You might be able to help us, or you might be able to help explain this. And would you please come forward, sir? Thank you. John, here's my thought. They do background checks on officers that they are going to hire. It's not in depth to the point that Human Resources is going to do. So I'm assuming we do that here with our officers before we hire them. Am I mistaken?
Well, police are a little bit different in that we can run a classified criminal history only on police personnel. We can't do it for anybody else. That's because of state law. So it's a little bit different, but your cursory classified criminal history could be done by a private organization. That come back almost immediately, and that gives you any criminal record that a person has.
So we could find out if they're convicted felons or have misdemeanors through our police department?
That could, well, no, not through the police department. That has to be done by a private organization.
Okay, all right. And we've got a couple of other ideas and thoughts, and you might be helpful. Michael?
So when background checks were done the last time, what she was able to do is look at, it's not about criminal backgrounds, because that's, it's one thing, and one would hope that we weren't actually interviewing people with criminal backgrounds, but what they did was they looked at statements that they've made, newspaper. They look at, did they say something in a public meeting that was extremely off-putting or inappropriate? This is the kind of background check to make sure that, and especially now, look at everything that's gone on in the country in higher education with college presidents who have said things that have landed the institution in a lot of hot water. So this is what, it's not a criminal background check that we're looking at, but we're looking at some of the content of their character. Is this somebody who should be representing this institution? And then they can let the college know, or the person, like that's what Angela did. She said, well, this candidate actually had this happen on their campus. And that became a very hard no for us reviewing it, because we said, no, that's not something we want to associate ourselves with. So that when we going back to Angela doing this check, this is the sort of information that we want to have. And we want to be thorough about it, because if we do it really fast and we miss something, that's on us, because we're taking the responsibility for it. So if we don't have all the information possible at our disposal, and it's a lot, I would guarantee you, it's a lot easier today than it was 10 years ago, given the internet and what all is out there, so.
If I could, the only downside with the internet is, of course, it's there forever. And do you want to deny someone a promotion opportunity because of a speeding ticket for 10 miles an hour 15 years ago? And that's where that's where I've found that having a third party that is involved in the search can be of real assistance, that they can look at you and point you in the right direction. And I mean, and we're a college. What's a big thing for us might not be a big thing for another organization. I mean, I'm thinking back 15 years ago when the University of Notre Dame found out that their head football coach had lied about his college credentials. And for them, they fired him immediately. And that, I believe, was the appropriate thing to do. So again, as we're doing this, and Michael cautioned us earlier about let's slow down and do our due diligence, there are things that we will have to address as they occur, and trying to guess what they will be now is, you know, I got better things to do with my time.
Okay. Art, did I see your hand up a moment ago? Okay. There is another group called the ORSUS, O-R-S-U-S group. They do backgrounds. Are either one of you familiar with them? They do backgrounds like this for us from the state all the time. They might be able to get this done quicker. Art, I know what you're going to say. Yes.
Yeah, we've already,
Selected somebody to do
Yes.
it. Yes, Jeff. Same thing.
I was going to probably say the same thing Art
Yeah.
was. We've went over this, and, you know, if it comes back that they can't do a background check for 2 years, we regroup and we go at it again. Yeah.
Okay.
Your key delay factor
What's
in
that?
this, if you're concerned about delays, your key to delay factor will, I believe, occur if you have to use a party that we do not currently have a contract with to do the background check, because you're looking at a 30 to 45-day add onto the process just to get them a new person under contract, get the RFP out, get them vetted, get the contract award scheduled through the board. And if the college has an existing contract any existing contract that we have that would be a third-party contract that would help us, that would help support the search, I can only believe that it would be done in a professional manner because they're already under contract, and that it would be certainly done in a more expedient manner than trying to find a new third party that would go out there and do that. Does that line up with your experiences? Okay, thank you.
So just to go back, you'll be able to do a quick, shallow study on the 5 candidates. Is that correct? Either one of you can answer that, because we do the deep dive. Is that what you were originally alluding to, John? The shallow dive where we know that they're not felons, and then we do the deep dive on the final candidate. I want to make sure, you're over there laughing, I'm trying to make sure we have everybody on the same page. Wendy, would you turn his mic on for him?
No, I didn't touch it.
I think that we need to have, I don't want to let expediency become the driver in this, that we have, if we have an organization that the college already has under contract to conduct background investigations and that search, then they are the ones that are most qualified to do that, and we should use them. If we don't, you know, my objective in the search for the president, frankly, has been very aggressive in timetable, that my expectation and hope was that we could perhaps find a president, not an interim, a president, by the time the fall semester started, to have them on board when the year starts up. I can almost guarantee if we're having to go outside for these kinds of searches, you can forget about that. We're looking towards December. And that's a concern. So we have a good staff here, and I think that the essence of this is communication with the staff and us about as this situation develops, that I don't believe we can sit here in a room, especially without this headhunter, excuse the term, but that's the one I'm most familiar, not having been contacted and not having input from that person or that organization on what they can achieve. What are their limits? And if we're inviting them to the party, then we need to be sure that they can play at that party.
So for personnel, we have a contract with the one group,
The poly group.
okay? So we can find something out. And I'm going back now. We have a regular meeting the 24th, so the week of the 24th, when do you think we could get a shallow depth of those 5 candidates? Not necessarily the deep dive, but the shallow depth.
Well, I would have to talk with them to see how long it would take, because if we're asking them to do 5 candidates at the same time, we don't know what is currently on their plate. So we would have to ask them how
Okay.
long that would take. But normally, with past experience with them, they take 10 days to do the references, which I know is different than the criminal background check, but the references where they contact supervisors, people who have reported to the individual, colleagues, things of that nature.
Okay, so you would have an answer for us on the 24th.
Yeah.
Okay, and then if it's available, we'll do the meeting later that week. Is everybody good with that? Thank both of you. Okay. Did you have a question? No. Okay. Wendy, you got everything done for yours, right?
What are you talking about?
From personnel, everything, all your
Yeah.
report and everything we needed from there?
Yeah, you asked me that.
Okay. All right. And Jeff, from our committee, we have everything that's gone forward, right?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So the procedures for selecting of an interim president, Jordan, do we have anything for that?
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, we're done with item number 5 then?
Yes, moving to item 5, considering. Oh, we've got the 5 candidates. We voted on that. We did that. There was a motion. We did a roll call vote, you'll recall.
Well, if we're going back,
What's that?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
To make sure you've got that recorded, because when you said, did we do item 5? Yes, we did.
So the motion that I have, trustee Daly motion that the candidates recommended by the Personnel Committee be accepted by the board.
Okay.
And then I have trustee Daly motion to recommend that the document provided during the special meeting be provided to the public electronically as soon as possible, and that motion passed. Then that's the last motion I have recorded.
Okay. So we've got,
And
and we
I have
passed that.
that, and I have that in item number 5.
Okay.
So does that mean we're moving to item number 6?
Yes.
Okay.
Jeff, did you have a question?
Mr. Chair, I was just going to comment that I believe we've covered everything we need to cover.
So we can go to 6.
Yeah, I believe and 7. This is going to be a fluid type situation. We'll know more at the meeting. And at that point in time, we can check on the background, how that's coming, if we need to do something different, maybe we do something different, maybe we don't, you know? But we'll do that on the regular
24th.
meeting, because the meeting on, the regular meeting is going to be very busy.
Yes, and now we have item 7, because we'll figure out the procedures
No,
for
that's
selecting.
already been done.
Yeah, so the invitations to the presidential candidates for interview. We won't know until the 24th what Human Resources tells us, so that we can set a date for them to come in.
Correct.
Okay. Closed session?
Mr. Chair, to confirm, then we're done with item 6 and 7.
What's that?
To confirm, we're done with items 6 and 7. There's been no motion.
6 and 7.
There's no motions
So
in those
develop
items.
procedures for selecting of interim president. We'll do that at the meeting on the 24th. And at that time, we'll approve the date that we're going to have the interview for the candidates after we've heard from Human Resources.
Just to clarify, there has been no motion for that. That's just discussion.
That's just the way we're going to have to do it.
I know, that's why I'm just making sure everybody's on the same page for that, so, okay.
Okay. Closed session. Do you need to read the document?
I just wanted to advise the public that I had written a legal memorandum that's attorney-client privilege to the board requiring my discussion with the board to discuss these confidential legal matters. Obviously, it's not my role to make a motion to go into closed session, but in order for me to discuss that with you, such a motion would have to be made, and it would have to be approved by a 2/3 vote of the board.
Okay. Do we have a motion to go into closed session? Yes, John? I'm sorry, John. Your microphone.
Are we going to consider going into closed session?
Yes. We have to have a motion to go into closed session.
If I could make a comment before we take the vote, and it's no secret to anybody that works with this board that I've had a concern now for going on 4 years about the number of closed sessions that we have. This board consistently has more closed sessions than any board I've ever been on. And we need to be really careful in using that tool. And for example, the Open Meetings Act may define what you can go into closed session for, but it also does, I've never seen it set up where the reasons for which we go into closed session are so broad. There's usually some specificity to it. In other words, if you're going into a closed session to discuss an existing a pending lawsuit, that lawsuit needs to be named. And I think we need to be careful when I don't subscribe to that it's a good idea that we put closed session on the agenda when we don't know for sure we're going to go into closed session. That we owe it to the public to, if we're not going to deal with that and that's not an issue, we'll need to take that off the agenda when there's no closed session that's going to occur. So thank you for your indulgence, sir. I appreciate it.
So to help you understand, John, in our layout of our agenda and our bylaws, they always place closed session on it. Whether we go or not, it's always in there just in case we need to. Secondly, since I've been chair, we have seldom gone into closed session. My predecessors took the board into closed session more often. Third, we have contracts coming up that we need to talk about in closed session. That's what we're attempting to do this evening, so the meeting will go smoother on the 24th.
And I'm not sure I understand the point.
The point is, why we're going into closed session has to do with contracts. Unlike my predecessors that took us in for a variety of reasons that did not have anything to do with the law, these specifically do.
Mr. Chair, respectfully, we have an obligation to the public to let them know within bounds of what we're going to talk about. And the Open Meetings Act is broad in its nature, but it is, I believe it points the direction in which they want us to go. For example, you can go into closed session for acquisition of real estate, but not for the sale of real estate.
But we're
And-
going in for contracts. It fits what we need to do.
Then if
If you don't want to go into it,
That's
don't
not-
vote for it.
No, you're missing my point. My point is that if it's appropriate that it be discussed in closed session, then that's fine. We'll go into closed session. But if it's going to be for contract discussion, then I don't understand why we don't name the contract. I know of no classified research that's going on at this institution, probably, so that portion of it's out. And all I'm saying is that in the interest of clarity and letting the public know what we're doing and saving people time in the future when they're doing research for legal cases, that we put some specificity into when we're actually going to have a contract that needs to be discussed in closed session, then let's put who that contract's with. I mean, I don't see how that has to be in closed session. That naming, you can go into closed session, but it needs to be named. And the fact that this is the way we always done it
Mr.
doesn't cut any
Attorney,
ice.
would you please help answer the question for Mr. Daly?
Well, here, I'll read from the Open Meetings Act. So the Open Meetings Act does have certain provisions with respect to going into closed session. One of the provisions indicates, with specificity, that if there's matters exempt from disclosure under state or federal law, that you can go into closed session to talk about those. It has been ruled by the Michigan courts that attorney-client written privileged material fits within that guideline. Another exemption to the Open Meetings Act with respect to going into closed session in turn concerns the collective bargaining negotiation units and to discuss those types of provisions. And I believe those are the two areas that chairperson has indicated wish to be discussed.
Okay, and I understand that's the generality of the law.
Right.
What I'm saying is that when I'm looking at an addition on the agenda that says closed session, I'm a simple man. I have this expectation that someplace along that line at that meeting, we're going to go into closed session. We should not be just blatantly putting it on the agenda as a matter of convenience to do that. You can always add an item to the agenda at the meeting. The second point is that, and I agree completely with you, that, for instance, in things like labor relations contracts and particularly in labor relations contracts or employment contracts, those are allowed to be discussed in closed session. The issue of discussion is not, as far as I'm concerned, is not on the table. It's the fact that this board, I believe, has an obligation to the public in telling them not the specific nature, but the topic. In other words, if we're going to go into closed session to discuss a labor relations agreement, then if we go into closed session to discuss a labor relations agreement between the college and, I don't know, the Association of University Professors. And that, I don't see how that is anything other than helping the public to understand how we do business.
Is there a motion to go into closed session? Okay. Do you need an explanation?
You don't want to go into closed session? You don't want to go into closed
Okay.
session?
All right. The meeting's adjourned. Thanks.